All right, well, I guess this is going to be part 2 of getting this engine ready to go for paint and installation back into the D4. If this is your first time watching, just check the video description. There's a playlist of what I was doing. But in the last video, I got the fuel system cleaned out and primed up, ready to, well, not primed up, but it's ready to go. The oil system, I cleaned that out, and that is primed, so I pre-lubed everything. That's ready to go. In this video, I need to do 2 things. One is install this flywheel, which typically in a car, a flywheel is easy to install, but that thing weighs a significant amount. I also have to clean out the inside of the bell housing here. And then I need to finish converting it over to a direct start. Last video I did get the generator in, but that was just because I had to. So there's a couple of small things that I have to do to convert it. The engine that when I bought this tractor, the engine was already converted to a direct start, so I have all the stuff I need for it. So it's just going to be a matter of swapping everything over and cleaning it up. For the direct start conversion, what I have to do here is there's a voltage regulator that goes right there. I have that, I just need to install it. And over on the bell housing here, I need to make a plate that covers these coolant channels. There's also a coolant channel right here that I need to block off. I have the plate for that. This whole clutch thing right here is going to get pulled out, and this engages the pony motor, if I had it, to the flywheel. So that's coming out. Then there's probably, I'll make some more plates hopefully to cover this up and that up. I think on the original engine, when I took it apart, like there wasn't anything covering it, and this was just a solid mouse nest that was in there. It was pretty gross. The starter goes in here. Should probably fit that in, make sure that fits. I also can remove this. I have a block off plate for that, and I believe here. And well, maybe we should clean out the intake too. I haven't looked in there yet. Before I put the flywheel in, I should probably clean out in here. It's pretty gross, but I need to decide if I'm going to use this bell housing or the original bell housing. They're different casting numbers. This is a this is 4H5891. I'm assuming that's what that is. Over here, it's like 4B7682 maybe. Different casting numbers. Maybe I'll pull this one out and see if I can spot the differences. This one is way cleaner. There's just a little bit of sludge in the bottom. And I know for a fact that this one's going to mount up and not have any problems. So these bell housings are like clearly way different from each other. The casting numbers are different, but when I look in the parts manual, it has the same part number listed for basically every year or every serial number as being the same assembly number. So I'm not really sure. I guess maybe the casting number replaced the other one. And this one has also been heavily modified, so I can show you what they've done. These studs up here, this is where the pony motor mounts. So they've basically ground those off, and it looks like maybe they welded them in. I'm not sure. Over here where the starter goes in through that hole this hole right here. And if you look closely, this is a modification. They've drilled a hole right there to fit the starter. So originally did not have that hole. And then just in general, like this case, the newer case appears to be a little bit beefier. Like this right here is quite a bit longer than here on both sides. This one is drilled for a starter, and this looks like a factory drill. It looks a lot cleaner. So it's looking like I'm going to use this bell housing. Should probably make sure this starter is going to fit. It's actually quite a large starter. The teeth on it are still good. At least, and it works. Oh yeah, that's gonna fit. So it's kind of a pain to pull this thing. I'm gonna have to pick it up off my furniture dollies here, since it's sitting right on there, but it's gonna be worth it. I mean, I think it's the only way to get this whole thing out, which I'm gonna pull, and just to get this thing really cleaned out inside. By the way, guys, whenever there's a lock tab like this, I put the lock tab back on, but I always use Loctite. I just put the tab back on just so it's kind of complete. remember from last time, there's 2 hidden nuts up here that don't have lock washers on them. I just checked on the other block. These do not go through, which would make a lot of sense. That'd be dumb to make them go through. So it should be ready to pop off. I have it, just the oil pan sitting on those blocks. So hopefully this whole thing should just slide out on the dolly once I start hammering on it. I'm an idiot. I forgot there's some bolts on the back here. Looks like 4 of them. So glad I didn't hit on it too hard. That looks better. About got it here. So this engine doesn't fall over. Looks pretty good. Just some, some dirt I need to clean out there. There's a lot of dirt, like if you look in between here, on the other engine too, it's just those pockets collect dirt. This here is the coolant channel, which goes into here. I'm wondering, maybe it'd be a lot better just to block it here. If I can find a way to block it here, instead of having to put a gasket on top. I'll think about that. Maybe not, I'm not sure. I think you're supposed to take this thing off. Oh, that doesn't look like the right thing. We'll just pretend we didn't take this off. According to the manual, you just remove these bolts like I did before and it's supposed to pop out. So it might just be stuck. So we'll find out. This last bolt was causing it to not. Oh yeah, there we go. All right, we got it. So there is an oil plug at the bottom of here. I was wondering why it wasn't draining very well. Well, typically that's not the good thing. It's like this lever's held on with a bolt. There we go. This is the last piece. All right. So the one other thing I got to do that's kind of in relation to this is get this flywheel prepped. It's very, very covered in grease too. And this is like grease that you can't degrease. You have to like take a paint scraper and scrape it all off before you degrease it. I've already pulled the pilot bearing out so I get the tray number off. I got a new one ordered up right here. It's the part number. Been taking a few measurements with my highly precise measuring device here. And basically right there to right up here is the pins. You can see them on there, on the transmission case there. And these are 21 inches apart, basically. There's no pins anywhere on here. I mean, I guess you could say maybe that one, but that's not even close. These bolt holes are 21 inches apart. So we might be looking at a situation where I have to take these pins out, which is not the end of the world. But just in general, these holes are much larger, and they're much larger here than what's on here. So I think I need to do is pick this thing up and mount it up and see if it's gonna work for me. Yeah, it's not even worth wasting time on this because you look on here, these are like 1/2 inch bulb holes, and these are like 3/8 or quarters. I mean, they're tiny. Clearly maybe this is off of a different machine or different application, or they might have just radically changed everything. I know on later machines they cut the clutch so you could remove the clutch cover just by itself without the steering clutch stuff. So maybe that's what that's about. But there's really no way I can use this without modifying it. So I'm back to using this one. This one's actually way cleaner, so that's good news. I mean, it's less work for me. Just a few bolts in here to strip out, just so I can clean everything. Yeah, an artist made that plate right there. It is aluminum, but this isn't a water channel, so it doesn't really matter. Can you imagine if I spent hours cleaning up that other case and it didn't fit? That'd be like time to retire at that point. All right, I'm gonna go over all the surfaces now with a brush and get all this scale off. It's pretty rough, but you gotta remember this isn't gonna be a machine surface anymore, just the batteries are gonna sit on here. So it's okay. I cleaned up a little bit here and you can see it does clean up okay. I'm using the knotted wire wheel brush. So I'm not gonna film this because this is really aggressive and it shoots stuff that's gonna hit the camera. So instead it'll just bounce harmlessly off my face. So let's take a quick look here. Oh, dog tax. So right here, you'll notice like there's a mark here. This is where the fenders go. So I'm gonna go ahead and prime this whole thing. It's okay if the fenders go over that. On the top, it cleaned up pretty good. It's pretty pitted, but it doesn't matter. So this is just gonna be where the battery tray is. So I'll just go ahead and prime over that. I still haven't figured out what to do about the coolant passage yet. I mean, the easiest thing to do is gonna be to just put a plug in here, just like a coolant plug or a freeze plug or whatever. But I might actually wanna keep access to the coolant. So I might run it through in here and then put a plate so I can get to this later if I want to run like some kind of special heater. This just needs to be covered up over here though. And there's plenty of bolt holes to... I'm really curious about this starter hole. So it looks like they've drilled it like I showed before, but there is like a cutout where the 3 holes are. So I'm not really sure. The guy was telling me that the old ones were not factory drilled, so I'm just curious about how that worked. I have the plate for here, so that'll block that off. Over here is the inspection port, and I think this is just for looking at the back of the flywheel to see what if you're on top dead center or not. So here I'll just do a quart gasket with Permatex 3 and grease like I did on the transmission cover. Make up a quick template here. These threads are just destroyed. I don't know what happened to them. Hopefully this gets me close. Why is the dog growling? I've been looking at this thing. I think what I'm going to do is I'm pretty sure the fuel line runs through here, and this is where the handle stuck out. In here there's a bushing, you can look in there, that goes through. I would like to block that off. So I think what I'm going to do is just plug this hole and then leave, this can stay, this can stay, and this hole on the other side doesn't come into the bell housing, so I'm not worried about that. I just don't want any holes into the bell housing, so definitely plug up this guy. Gonna take a quick break on making these panels because I just noticed this crack right here. Now this is a great reason on why, if you're inexperienced like me, you want to spend some time cleaning your parts, because you'll notice stuff like this but I would never have seen this if I hadn't scraped all that rust scale off of here. So this isn't really a big deal. It's not structurally probably a problem because there's a bolt there and there. So if that one's not in, who cares? But this is actually a good opportunity to practice a repair on something like this. So this crack has actually raised up a portion of the thing here. So I've marked kind of where the high portion is. And I think what I'm going to do, grind a nice channel in through here. That way I have a nice deep penetration where I can kind of stitch it all back together. And then I'll do the same on the crack in the front here. I'll grind a nice channel into here and then just grind it all smooth. I'm sure there's like experienced welders that are about to have a heart attack. But you know, before you have your infarction, you got to remember, first, this is not a structural repair. It'll be fine without it. Second, I mean, you are watching a YouTube channel with Hillbilly in the title, so. See if I can pop this back down here. worst case is this just cracks again, which if it does, no big deal. This is actually a really shallow bolt hole, so I'm guessing that someone put too long of a bolt in it and that's what cracked it. All right, so this is a 1/2 inch grade 8, so it's 80 foot-pounds. So let's see if it can take it without stripping the thread. Does it okay? Let's do it another like quarter turn. Yeah, I think that's gonna work. I don't think I need a thread insert. Got it flipped on the front now. One other thing I noticed is there's a broken off bolt in there. I did not break off that bolt, so shouldn't be too bad to get out. Usually when you're dealing with that size bolt, it's easier to get an extractor in there. Is that another crack? I think it is. Can you see that? Was there like a gorilla tightening these bolts down? What's going on here? So if it comes out pretty easy, that's like exactly why they use too long of a bolt. We'll find out in a second here. Yeah, it came out with like no effort at all. I could turn it by hand and it was loose, so that's what happened. They used too long of a bolt and the case got cracked because of it. I don't know, maybe I should just leave it be because it's not really deformed. Let me see if I can torque it down without it getting worse. The other one on the top was like, it's in the neighborhood of like a whole chunk of the top coming off if you torqued it down too much. This one is just a tiny hairline crack. And I don't see anything. I mean, it's primed on the inside, so you can't really see. But on the outside also, I mean, there's no, I don't know. I think it'll be fine. I'm not going to worry about it. We're going to jump ahead in the future about a week and talk about this weld repair one more time, since it has been a week and it hasn't cracked yet. But I just want to make it clear, doing something like this is like rolling the dice. You never know what you're going to get when you're welding cast iron. I got lucky. I mean, I did the best I could. I heated it up. I used a stainless steel wire on it, and I was just very careful with it. So it hasn't cracked. I've torqued and untorqued and like several times put a bolt in there to the torque spec. It hasn't cracked. First of all, on both of these cracks, there's no danger of them spreading. This one is a circular crack. It went like out and then around. This one though, I repaired because I can actually see if it's going to crack again, since this is an easily visible area. If I was going to repair it and I was serious about it, I probably would have, now that I'm thinking about it, I would have drilled into here in a few spots and pinned it just to sandwich the whole thing together. That's probably the better way to do it. But you know, like I said, it was just practice, and either way, it'll be fine. All right, so that's done. Let's go back to the past now and continue on. This is a piece of 3-inch wide by 1/8 thick plate, which is pretty much perfect for this piece. Back of this plate wasn't actually too rusty. Still working. The hardest thing with this stuff is controlling. It wants to come out really fast. I'm always ending up putting too much on, but you just got to be a little bit careful. All right, so this is a coolant channel, so I coated the bottom with polyurethane just because this is just mild steel, it'll rust. And then I'm gonna use a gasket on that. That bench sander does a really good job of shining up plates and like smoothing corners out. I hadn't really ever tried it for that before, but this turned out pretty nicely. All right, so for this hole, I made up this plate. I did prime the top, but then I ground it off because I'm going to prime the whole top again anyways, so I don't want a primer over primer. So I think the easiest way to do this is just going to be to run this bolt in from the other side. Then on this washer, I'll put some RTV. Way too much. Get this on. Uh-oh, that's all over the threads. Nice. Oh, by the way, a subscriber sent me these gasket scrapers. Apparently I was causing him like physical pain or maybe mental anguish watching me use a razor blade to scrape gaskets, but thank you, Blake, for sending these to me. It was kind of a mad dash to get this cover on and get with the RTV hardening up and the Loctite all set up right. So I didn't really film it, but I followed the book on this one where I let it set up for an hour before I torqued it down all the way. That's helpful. Thank you. So this is the newer bell housing that I'm not reusing, but I just wanted to show you. So there's kind of a difficult thing here because there is a seal around this water channel and I don't have this gasket that went around it, so I'm going to have to use RTV. You don't want to get RTV on rubber seals. RTV does not bond to rubber, so I was very, very careful with the amount of RTV I put around here. I went a very, very thin amount around here, and I let it set up for a little bit over an hour since it's pretty cold in here before I torqued everything down. I don't trust the seal. If it does leak, at least it'll be kind of contained in a small area and it won't leak down through the behind the block. So was my plan here. Hopefully it works out. Here's the flywheel. It weighs probably about 700 pounds. It's incredibly heavy. I need to put the new pilot bearing in, but I think before I do that, there is a grease channel somewhere on here. There's a grease fitting. Oh, I took the grease fitting off. And I probably just want to verify that I can actually get that channel is cleared out. So I'll do that first. This inside race looked great, so I'm not going to mess with that. And the teeth all look good. So this is where the actual clutch plate goes, and these teeth all look in great shape. We're not missing any of the teeth on the outside. They all look pretty good. All right, there's a grease fitting right here. So I'll replace that one. I could have sworn I already took a grease fitting off of here somewhere else on this thing. So yeah, okay, all right. Yeah, this other one fits here. Is it coming out? You'd expect it to come out immediately, unless it's coming out somewhere else. Oh, it's just coming out of this fitting hole. So you must be able to grease it from the back or the front, I guess. Okay, I see it coming out. It's not coming out in the race. Yeah, it just comes out right here. I checked on the inner race. There's 2 holes for oiling ports, but they're blocked off. I had to look up in the parts diagram how this went back together. It's been so long. But basically, you put the bearing in there, and that's the inner retainer. And you have a gasket. They just call this a washer, but it's like a fabric. I guess it's just a spacer to take up. I'm not sure what, maybe just keep grease from flying out. Then the outer retainer. This is a extreme duty high speed grease here, which should be fine for this bearing. I flipped through the book again. So there is a mark here, and the book says that there's supposed to be a mark over on the flywheel. And I think it's this one right here. I just not 100% sure, so I'm gonna get it on there, and then I'm gonna verify that the cylinder 1 top dead center is actually correct before I torque everything down. Charlie had a pretty rough day today as far as exercise, so I think she's not going to move anymore tonight. One other thing I found on the book, so after you install the flywheel cover, or the bell housing I guess I'm calling it, they want you to check the run out on the bore and the face, which is basically they want you to attach a gauge to the crankshaft here and then measure as you like jack the bearing or jack the crankshaft up and down to kind of move it around in the bearings. I am not going to do that because let's say it's out of spec. I mean, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to replace the flywheel cover? Not going to happen. Am I supposed to rebuild the engine? Not going to happen. So I'll just let that be. When I install the flywheel, I will check run out on that, make sure it's on there straight and it's not tilted or anything. That's probably the most important thing to check. Now, to hang this thing on here, if I was smart, these are the flywheel bolts. I would have bought some more of these and then cut the heads off to use it as a guide stud. So it'd just be like hanging a tire. Unfortunately, I am not smart, did not do that. Also, these threads are kind of dirty in here. I should probably clean those out. So I need to find another way to lift that flywheel in here because it is not light. There is a mark on the front of the flywheel that lines up with this one in the back too, so I feel pretty good about that. Let me get it close. There it is. Wood's in the way. Of course it is. Okay, I got 4 studs in. It's on here, kind of. Let's see if I can run an actual bolt in now. This would be a lot easier with an extra set of hands, let me tell you that. Oh my gosh, that was rough. Not really happy with how a couple of these bolts are going in. I think I'm going to take them out and have to get a tap and clean those threads out. I don't want to just torque them on there, so that's fine. I can do that later. It's not a big deal. Not going to really miss anything. What I am going to do though is verify the timing. So if you look around here, I got the mark lined up there with the arrow for that's TC1 and 4. And let's take a look at the valve here. Or on this rotation, 4 is completely open, or the valves are closed. This one looks like it's in the middle of something. So if I rotate it, well, if I rotate it either way, I can just rotate this by hand pretty easily. Yeah, right there. So 4 looks like it's at top dead center right there. So let me spin this 360 and see if we're at top dead center 1. If I turn it a little bit, yeah, 1's not moving. I'm turning it right now, by the way. So I'm just going to quickly verify that it engages okay with the teeth. All right, see if you can see in there. Give this a shot. Get my clicker. Looks okay. It's hitting a little bit. Was a little wobbly. I am going to wait until I get that torqued down all the way just to make sure that's not a problem. I also saw I was getting stuck. So it was, the pinion was not engaging into the gear. So that also could be just because this thing isn't torqued down all the way. That's probably what it is. So I'm not going to worry about this yet until I get the tap and everything torqued out. All right, I got a tap in, cheapest one I could find. Made in Japan. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But fortunately it's long enough where I think I can get it in there without having to take this flywheel back off. Oh, I guess these holes are really tight on here. So yeah, this is gonna have to come off. Nice. It's really my own fault. I should have done this in the first place. Why is it stuck? Why is this stuck on here? Oh my gosh. These pieces of wood are the wood drifts I was using that shattered. So I'm guessing, if you look on the back of this thing, this is kind of what I was suspecting. Like this is basically like a press fit, a press fit on the back of the crank. So I should probably clean this out a lot better, get this nice and smooth. And like there's stuff on the back here, so I need to get this cleaned up as well. I mean, it's probably a good thing I took this off. All right, well the threads on these bolts were also pretty torn up, so I got a die and I rethreaded all those. So we should be good to go here now. You know what, I would have made this about 50 times easier if I had remembered to order the right size studs. That way I could have just threaded them through and run the whole thing on. I mean, that's obviously the way to do it. I kept forgetting to order them, and now this is the result. I got it. Not easy. I got all the bolts in. Before I put the lockers on and all that, you just gotta like walk it in just by jumping around between bolts to get it to press on there. It's really tight. Okay, I think it's bottomed in all the way. I'm gonna check run out now. So I know there's two things you gotta worry about when you're doing this. You have the crankshaft end play. So right now it's on like 89 or 91, I guess. And I can pull it, and you got about, I don't know, 8 or 9 mils of end play, which is in spec. That's a really good sign. So I'm gonna push in, and then I'm gonna turn it. It's at 0 right now, that's nice. Sorry, my big fat arm's in the way. Doesn't really seem to move much. That's good. Yeah, it's like not, there's no run out on this. Well, I just pulled it out a little bit, that's why. I'm really glad I cleaned the threads up, because it would have been about 500 times harder to get these bolts in here with the threads all messed up, because there's a lot of resistance. Now, I was getting ready to torque these to Kingdom Come, but I looked up the spec. There's actually a spec for the flywheel bolt torque, and it's 150. So that's fairly easy. Okay, ready to torque. I have my assistant here holding the crank bolt in place. Now, if I was going over 150, I probably wouldn't do this, because this is going to possibly loosen the crank bolt, even though it has a bolt holding it in. So I'll just be careful it's not moving otherwise. But we're only doing 150, which is not that bad. Okay, so to try this starter, I got it wired back up. Now, you remember before it was hitting the tooth and it wasn't engaging. And in the defense of the starter, the battery was not charged. So I've been charging that, and it's all in there now. So let's see if it works consistently. Yeah, there we go. So I think that's the issue with the starter. Yeah, okay. So it's consistently engaging, that's good. So one other last note, now that I've been working on this thing, and I've seen some videos on YouTube of direct start conversions of people starting them. And okay, you look in there, you get maximum 2 teeth of engagement when this thing starts. So if you're starting this thing up with full compression, you're just asking to snap some of these teeth off. So I don't know, I would probably recommend, at least for myself, is to have the compression release on, start turning it, and while it's turning, reach over and flip the compression release off. Because if you just start it like this, it's gonna snap. It's gonna tear those teeth up probably. Next up is this. This is a coolant passage, and this is the coolant that runs either from or to the pony motor back into the main block. So on the other engine, this is what they had. They had this. This is an aluminum plate that was right here, and then to give it rigidity, I think this is probably the original coolant neck that they've just sawed off and sanded down, and I think this just makes it rigid. So I'll just reuse that since it's, I don't know, that's kind of cool that they just did that. It's kind of lazy, but also interesting. So I'll reuse this and we'll just RTV that in. All right. Next up we have the intake. And also though, before I do that, let's talk about this little disaster here. So this is the throttle. I want to say that. This is the throttle. Now, normally you don't want your control rods to be bent like this. That's not normal. I looked at the other engine and this is the rod off of that one. Now, if you look at this closely, you'll see it's adjustable, right? Nope, they've welded it all back up. I'm not sure why. And they really went to town on the weld on this thing too. So we won't use that. But, I mean, I could bend this. I'm not sure. Do we have the full, like, I don't know. I don't know what to do with this. I think I might just bend this straight on the intake. So the way this works, in case you're not familiar, the pony motor is supposed to sit right here, and then its exhaust runs through the intake of the main diesel engine. There's like an internal baffle or a pipe that goes through, and then it comes out through the exhaust here. And that's the point of it. It's supposed to heat the intake up. So since we're doing away with that, I'm going to try to remove that internal pipe. It's apparently possible. And the reason I'm doing that is so, like I mentioned a few videos ago, I'm planning on putting a intake heater in to kind of replicate what the pony does. So I need that space in there so I can run the heater elements in. So I've seen quite a few comments of people that think that the pony motor heats the oil up for the main engine. It does not. All the pony does is it heats up the coolant and it heats up the intake using that exhaust pipe that's in here. Oh, there's a lot of stuff in here. Now the manual says you have to remove the intake to get this pipe out. Let's get this pin out of here. Man. Actually does not look bad in there. I've worked on cars where the intake looks a lot worse than this. You can kind of see the valves in there. Nothing too dramatic. A little bit dirty, but that's okay. You know, I think I just got fooled by the manual. So there is a snap ring right there, and I can almost guarantee you take that out and then you hammer it through the other side. So I don't even think I had to take this off the engine. The snap ring is broken in here, so I guess what do you expect at this point? So now this should just push through. Pull it out here. Yeah, I didn't have to take this thing out of the engine. Oh well, at least I can clean it out now. Got it pretty cleaned out inside. I kind of hosed it out with brake cleaner just to let it soak, and then I pressure wash the inside out. Now I'm going to put the end caps on. These are off of the other engine. These look like they're about 1/8 inch. You know, this internal exhaust pipe looks like it's brass. But this is a kind of an interesting piece. The reason the book told me to pull the intake to get this pipe out was because when it's in the tractor, your dash is like right here, so there wouldn't be enough room. Makes a lot of sense now that I thought about it. So I should probably, I'll try to remember to get a stud for here, just so it's even. And maybe I'll use an actual rag here. The thing is, if the compression release is out and I mess around with it and I forget about this, it's gonna suck it in there. So I gotta talk about this generator one more time. So I installed it on the last video. I kind of glossed over a lot of it and a couple people were asking about it. So let me just go over real quick on the backlash. So in this generator, obviously there's a gear that sticks out and it meshes with the cam gear. I have a spare cam gear right here. This is what it looks like. And unfortunately on this, it's impossible to measure backlash. once it's installed, right? I mean, how am I going to get to it? I guess you could take this front cover off, but then you'd have to take the whole front of the engine off. And there's no spec for the backlash, so I'll show you what I did, and I'll kind of run you through my reasoning on it. The closest thing to a spec I could find is the camshaft gear backlash. So this would be the camshaft gear to crank gear, and it's the spec is 3 to 4 mils with a max of 10. So 3 to 4 is actually quite tight, and the minimum, yeah, minimum's 3. So that's pretty tight. So any movement at all is basically going to be 3 to 4 thousandths. So what I did is I dry fitted this thing without any gaskets before I put any RTV on, and then I took this back cover off, and I just wanted to see a tiny bit of play in this shaft, and that would tell me that it's not bound up, but it's not too tight. All right, so I got the vice grips on the back of the shaft here. Now this is going to be a little bit deceiving, so if I rock it, it moves, right? But the gear is actually this, like about this big, so if you're going to measure backlash, you'd be measuring here. So the question you have to ask is this point on the vice grips moving more than 2 mils, 2 thousandths? Easily yes. So that's my take on it. It's not bound up. I think it's going to be fine. If you actually did need to add more backlash, though, you would add gaskets onto here to pull it away, and then you'd remove gaskets to push it towards. I can't emphasize enough, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just using my best judgment. If you think, if you know better, please let me know. But that's just, you know, not everything's going to be in the book. You just got to kind of use what you got as far as common sense. So that's what I was going. That's where I was going with that. I guess that's it for this video. We got the full conversion over to direct start, except for heating the intake, which we'll try out later once the engine's mounted. So next up for this thing is just going to be pressure washing it and painting it. Actually, there is one more thing I have to do I forgot about. I need to put this voltage regulator on. It goes right here. That's why there's 2 bolts missing. So I'll do that. That's really easy though. There's no reason to film that. And this is already set up for 12 volt. My next video is going to be undercarriage stuff because I want to get this sorted out before I paint this whole thing. There's not a lot to do on the undercarriage, I think. I think it's actually in pretty good condition. I'll kind of walk through. I've been doing a lot of research on it since it's a bunch of different parts from all different years kind of thrown together. But everything seems to be in pretty good condition, except I do need to replace that spring. So that's going to be on the next video probably. Have the replacement over there. And you know, they shipped this to me in UPS, and this is like compressed. So I wonder if there was if it just shooting through a UPS fan. All right, well that's it for this video. I was expecting this video to take a week, but there was just so many small issues that took a long time to wait for parts or work through, mounting and remounting that flywheel, just messing around with stuff. So fortunately, that's all done. Engine stuff's done, I think. And we can move on to undercarriage and then paint and then put it back together and hope something works. So anyways, thanks a lot for watching, guys. Really appreciate it, and I'll be back